Section 1 is probably the most interesting of all the sections because it's full of stories and people love stories. That's why great religious teachers have a lot of parables. It sticks in people's mind. There are a lot of stories here to illustrate the when and the what of Sri Mentri during the Buddha's time. The first extract, Nakhasikhā Sutta, is not so much of a story, it is an extract to show you that the term Dhammacakkhu or Dhamma-Eye refers to Sri Mentri. If you look at the extract, although the word Sri Mentri is not found here, we find a few synonyms and a few clues on why we can deduce that the Buddha was referring to a Sri Mentra. The first is on the first and second line. One who is accomplished in view. That is a synonym for a Sri Mentra. Then he goes on to, towards the end, there is a maximum of 7 more lives to be lived. This is also another indication that this person is a Sri Mentra. If you look at the footnote below, there are also other instances, lesser cases, where Dhammacakkhu or the Dhamma-Eye can refer to other levels of awakening, more than just Sri Mentri. First people who became Sri Mentras. After the Buddha attained the supreme enlightenment, he thought of his teachers, Alara Kalama and Udakaramaputra. He wanted to share the Dhamma with them, but he found that they had already passed away and they were in the Brahma realm. He surveyed the world and he found that the next people that he should share the Dhamma with are the 5 ascetics. These were the 5 ascetics who attended to him while he was still striving for supreme Buddhahood. At that time, he was undergoing self-mortification. These ascetics thought that it was a very noble thing for him to do, and they were attending to him. But then, when he realized that self-mortification was in vain, and it could not lead him to what he wanted, he abandoned it, started to eat and put on weight. His attendants got disillusioned and abandoned him. Out of gratitude for them, and also understanding that they were ready for awakening, he went to see them. The first sermon he gave was the Dhammacakkhu Sutta, the turning of the wheel of the Dhamma discourse. In that sutta, the Buddha talked about the Four Noble Truths, ended with a list of the factors of the Noble Eightfold Path. While he was giving this Dhamma talk, one of them, the Venerable Kondanya, attained the Dhamma-Eye, which saw that whatever has the nature of origination, all that has the nature of cessation. But he was the only one who got enlightened in that discourse. The other 4 did not get enlightened. So the Buddha conducted the first ever intensive meditation retreat. Both the Buddha and Āyasmā Aggacitta went out for alms round, collected the food, came back and fed the monks. The monks just spent their time meditating with the Buddha giving instructions. Eventually, one by one, all of them became Sri Mentras. They got a Dhamma-Eye. When all of them had attained the Dhamma-Eye, the Buddha gave the second discourse, which is the Anatta Lakkhana Sutta, a discourse on the characteristic of not-self. These were the first human beings who became Sri Mentras, eventually Arahants. They were all Renunciants. After that, the Buddha managed to help other ascetics, other Renunciants to attain arahantship, especially the 5 ascetics, I think 1,000 of them or over, 1,500 of them. All of them became arahants when they listened to the fire sermon. Now we're talking about lay followers or lay people. Who were the first lay people to become Sri Mentorers? The first one is Yasa. Yasa's story is also very interesting. Yasa was the son of a wealthy man. He was very well taken care of. In fact, he was pretty pampered. He had 3 mansions for 3 different seasons. He was attended to by his harem of women. He was not a spiritual aspirant. He had never done any retreat before, never done any meditation before. But it seems that when the time is ripe, things happen. One day, his female entertainers fell asleep in the night because Yasa fell asleep, and they thought, well, time for us to take a rest too. And they also lay down and fell asleep. When Yasa got up, he saw them in various postures, which was very disgusting to him. That sort of stimulated him or catalyzed that spiritual seeking in him. He wanted to look for something that is without tribulation. He left his mansion, and eventually he was led to the Buddha somehow. Karma led him there, I suppose. And the Buddha managed to pacify him, and then the Buddha gave him a discourse, a gradual teaching. We can see this on page 13. The gradual teaching is about giving, virtue, heaven, the danger, degradation, and defilement of sensual desires, ending with the advantages of renunciation. After he finished this gradual teaching, then he noticed that the mind of Yasa became ready. Ready in the sense that he was pliable, free of the hindrances. His mind was uplifted and clear. When he noticed that, he explained to him the Four Noble Truths. Upon hearing that, Yasa also got the Dhamma-Eye. I've explained the reason why I prefer to translate Vinivarana Citta as a mind without hindrances rather than an open mind. You can read it in the floating frame note. At this point, perhaps you might be interested to know about the 5 hindrances. I'm sure that all of you would know about it, but anyway, I have a slide to show you. Sometimes this is called the 5 defilements of the mind. This is not in a workbook. This is a quotation from Upakkilesa Sutta, SN 46.33. In this sutta, the Buddha said that defiled by these 5 things, the mind is neither supple, nor wieldy, nor luminous, but is brittle and not rightly composed for the evaporation of the inflows. What are these 5 defilements of the mind? Often called the 5 hindrances. First is sensual desire. Second is ill will. Third is sloth and torpor. Fourth is restlessness and remorse. The last one is doubt. During the COVID MCO time, I gave a online Dhamma talk on the 5 hindrances in meditation and in daily life. After that, we produced a video and uploaded to YouTube. Guess what? The last time we saw was 90,000 hits. Guess the number of people who are plagued by the 5 hindrances. You are not the only ones. By now it might have reached 100,000K. The next story is about Yasa's father. Again, Yasa's father was not a spiritual person. He was not looking for anything spiritual. He was looking for his son. Somehow he ended up in the Buddha's presence. The Buddha made use of his Sakti power to conceal his son from him, pacified him, gave him a similar discourse. Also gave him a talk on the Four Noble Truths, upon which he also attained the Dhamma-Eye. While Yasa was listening to that same discourse, he became an arahant. You don't have to be a spiritual aspirant. When the time is ripe, things happen. If you want to read the story of Yasa's mother, the Buddha also gave her a similar talk. She also became a stream enterer. Then we come to the story of King Bibimsara. He was the ruler of Magadha at the time. And he came with his entourage of royal courtiers. Again, the Buddha gave them a similar talk. All of them became stream enterers. The next story may be even more interesting. This is about someone who is a leper. And the story of Suppabuddha is shown here in your book. I'm sure you would have read it. And interesting for you to read the background, why he became a leper. If you have read it, I hope that it will impress upon you to be very careful with your speech and what goes on in your mind. Don't simply look down on people. They may not be Buddhists. They may be dressed in rags and be very unbecoming from your Theravada point of view, but they might be very highly attained people. Never look down upon others. Suppabuddha also wasn't a spiritual aspirant. He was looking for food. He came across an assembly of people. He thought there's some festival going on, he might get some food. But it turned out to be just people listening to a Dhamma talk. And he decided that since he was there, he might as well sit down and listen. He was sitting right at the edge of the assembly. And then the Buddha noticed him with his psychic power, gave him a similar discourse. He also became a stream enterer. We go on to the story of other renunciants who became enlightened. The first one became a stream enterer while he was listening to the Dhammacakkhu Sutta, talking about the Four Noble Truths. The others slowly became stream enterers, but we don't know what sort of talk the Buddha gave to them. This is the story of Sāriputta and Moggallāna before they became bhikkhus. They were already renunciants and followers of one of Buddha's contemporary at that time called Sanjaya. Apparently, both of them had made a pact among themselves. If one were to realize the truth, then one should inform the other. One day, Sāriputta was in a village and he came across Āyasmā Aggacitta. When he saw him in the village, he was immediately impressed by his demeanor. He seemed very calm and peaceful, and his faculties were very bright. Immediately, he jumped to the conclusion that he must be an awakened person. So he asked him about who his teacher was, what his teaching was. Āyasmā Aggacitta was very humble. He said, I'm new to this Dhamma. I don't know much, but I can tell you the little that I know. Sāriputta at the time said, no problem. Something is better than nothing. You just tell me what you know. Just paraphrasing what he said. He gave him a very short verse. Whatever things have a cause and source, their cause the realized one has told, and also that which is their succession. Such is the great Ascetics doctrine. Essentially, this is a short verse about cause and effect. Upon hearing that, Sāriputta also attained the Dhamma-Eye. Then he went back to tell his friend, since they had already made a pact. As he was approaching, Moggallāna saw him coming from the distance, and he also was immediately impressed by his change of character. He seems calm and composed. His faculties were bright, and immediately he asked him, have you attained the deathless? Then Sāriputta answered, yes, I have. To us Buddhists nowadays, the word deathless is a synonym for Nibbana. But they were not Buddhists. It seems that the word deathless is common stock among the renunciants at that time. The Buddha made use of a lot of words that were already circulating at that time, but he always redefined them according to what he wanted. The word Brahmin, for example, for him, a Brahmin is an Arahant. The word Arahant is a common stock term that is used among the renunciants at the time. The deathless is also one of them. The next account is of a schism in the Saṅgha. As you all know, Devadatta was the Buddha's cousin. He was very ambitious. He wanted to take over the Saṅgha. He proposed 5 very austere points that the Buddha should impose among all, for all bhikkhus to follow. One of them is all monks must be vegetarian. Second, all monks must not go under the shade of a roof. They must stay in the open. All monks cannot accept robes that are offered by lay people. They must go and find their own robes through the rubbish dumps and roadside and so forth. Altogether, 5 points. The Buddha rejected all of them. Apparently, there were some monks who were very impressed by all these austere practices, and they thought, wow, this Devadatta is more austere even than the Buddha. And so they were impressed and they followed him. They were the first monks who created a schism in the Saṅgha. When the Buddha heard about this, he asked Āyasmā Sāriputta and Āyasmā Moggallāna, who had then become bhikkhus, in fact became his chief disciples, to go and get back those bhikkhus. So they went. Devadatta was overconfident, I guess, very arrogant. He saw them coming and he thought that they had come to join him. Even Sāriputta and Moggallāna coming to join me. He was very happy, welcomed them with open arms, treating them like the Buddha. He said, oh, come. I feel very tired. My back is aching. I want to take a rest. You take over the assembly. Just like the Buddha would sometimes do. So he laid on his double robe, he fell fast asleep, and then Āyasmā Sāriputta and Āyasmā Moggallāna addressed the monks. And what did they do to the monks? You can see that on page 28. Venerable Sāriputta then used the wonder of mind reading to instruct them. Venerable Moggallāna used the wonder of supernatural powers to the same effect. And while these monks were listening to these talks, all of them also attained the Dhamma-Eye. But we don't know exactly what Āyasmā Sāriputta and Āyasmā Moggallāna's talks were all about. The next sutta is of a Sikh monk. The Buddha heard about him, went to see him, and then gave him a Dhamma talk on the 6 senses and the 3 characteristics related to them. Upon hearing this, the monk also became a stream enterer. All right, so these are the interesting stories that are found in this section. We go on page 37, discussion topic number 1a. Construct a flow chart to map out the process of entering the stream for the lay people mentioned by the excerpts in this section. This is quite clear, simple enough. The second part of discussion topic number 1. Is this process applicable to renunciants? Give reasons for your answer. This process means this flowchart that you had constructed. This flowchart also applicable to renunciants. Whether their answer is yes or no, give reasons. The third part. Is there any one element in this process, in this flowchart, that you consider to be more important than the others? Again, give reasons for your answer. So these are the 3 parts to discussion topic number 1. I think they are quite clear, so I will leave you to commence your discussion.